like on the minute that they say that they're going
Which is
live.
terrible, really, because...
Like if you were on a TV show and they were like, oh, our show starts at 9:30, and you're like, we're having trouble with audio, we're going to start at 9:32,
right?
that'd be considered
Like, especially in
unprofessional.
today's day and age where...
Oh, and
What?
we're live,
Sorry?
everyone.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I mean, at least we're professional.
Exactly. Welcome back, everybody. It's TCSTV Live, the show where things are disorganized and it's spontaneous and it's great. And we look forward to it every week, especially this week, because we're back from New York City.
New York City, yes. We did have a nice time.
We had a great time.
Sony took us out there again to launch the brand new A7R III. I'm going to do my very best to say A7R III today.
Not Mark III.
I might throw a Mark in there. It's
Okay.
just because I'm obsessed with men named Mark.
Specifically, who is your favorite Mark?
I'm lying, I'm not. I don't know.
Wahlberg?
It's the British in me, I guess. I just like to say Mark II, Mark III, Mark 4.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to stop that today.
So A7R III was, it's not a camera we were expecting at all, honestly. That was pretty far down my list. I thought A7 III, A7S III, there were going to be a lot of things. That wasn't the first camera I thought would be updated because it's still one of their more successful ones, but I guess that's why they want to keep that line.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of funny. You know, there's a lot of talk about this. You know, David Schloss and I had a little bit of a bet, and he was like, it's going to be an A9R or something like that, or, you know, there's other rumors like an A9.
Silly David Schloss.
Silly David Schloss. Other things like A7S Mark III and stuff like that. But I really thought, well, aren't they naturally going to come out with an A7 III?
Right.
Like they did before, right?
Yeah.
Get the masses crowd out, and then hit up the R model and the S model and kind of go from there.
But they did do the R model.
No, after the 7, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you gotta remember the first one, it's like A7 Mark II came out.
Yeah.
Then you got
the
A7R,
R,
then the A7S, right?
Yeah.
So I figured they would do the same thing here, but no, we're coming out with an R model right
Yep.
away. And you know why that is, kids? D850.
Yeah, I think that
That's
really
what I think.
I think that really tipped Sony's hand. This might have been one of those things where they were like 3 first, 850 came out, they saw the excitement, they had to offset that very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Right? They know that megapixel counts can be the big thing. Our tech guys look reasonably concerned. They seem okay.
I love every time we're doing this show and there's a huddle in the back there. Then we know something's afoot. So as always, guys, let us know if there's any technical issues.
Hey, Gary's giving us a thumbs up. We're good. But yeah, so... Oh, okay, good.
But
Ban them.
they have a Walmart connection, so.
All right.
Oh, okay. But, you know, we had a nice time in New York, got to see all our friends on the press junket, and it is a very exciting camera, hey? So
It really is.
We want to talk about it today. I know there's tons of specs and stuff out there, so this is a good opportunity for you to talk to us, ask us questions you might have about the camera, let us know if there's anything that you're wondering about. You know, intangible things that you can't get off of an article, things like how it feels or weight or I don't know, like, you know, just overall design, overall feel, anything like that, you can ask us too.
Well, and also there were some things that we had in the video but that we weren't able to test adequately. We didn't have that long with the camera. So we can certainly touch on some of those today. You might not find them in the video that we've already posted, which hopefully everybody's already taken a look at.
Exactly.
But yeah, there's a few things I definitely want to touch on as well. We're starting to see the first processed RAW files show up. I think basically what we're starting to see is, it is basically a A7R II performance. But I can actually click to this. Was fired over, and this is the first image I've seen processed in Lightroom with Adobe software.
So Tony Northrup took this picture of you, uncharacteristically happy.
Yes.
And in this particular photograph, so this is actually from a RAW file. He processed it with the Sony software.
Yeah, you can tell. Like the dynamic range is really stretched in this one quite a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the first example that, it does have kind of that classic A7R look to it. I don't think we're going to see any surprises with this chip, and I also don't tend to buy it in too much when a company says, like, we're using the same sensor, but we've found a way to maximize it. Model to model, typically we see JPEG processing really improves, but we don't tend to see much difference in RAW.
Obviously, companies like DxOMark and all that kind of stuff, they're going to hit this stuff up. They're going to do all the DR testing, and I think the point that I want to get across is, I don't know why people would be upset that this is the same sensor, because the fact is, we've reached a point in digital photography where we've got tons of megapixels.
Yeah.
We've got tons of dynamic range, you know, beyond what we had with film in a lot of cases.
Yep.
you've got big safety blankets, you've got shadows to push and pull, you've got highlights to bring down. I mean, we really are spoiled when it comes to image quality. This camera was all about now improving the camera's function, its handling, its menu systems, making it shoot quick.
Yep.
We're into an age now where it's about giving you cameras that can do everything.
Right. And I really feel like I've been hitting on this a lot this week, but it reminds me so much of when the 5D3 was announced, and everybody was pretty underwhelmed when the camera was initially launched, because the sensor in the 5D Mark II was revolutionary. That
Right.
video, it was a huge megapixel bump, much like the A7R II
Yeah, the
was.
Mark
when it
III
hit.
didn't really change
Everybody was fixated on that sensor, and they were willing to forgive a lot of issues with the camera body itself. This is one where they've just focused on, okay, we've got image quality pinned down. That's not the thing we got to work on here. But looking at the specs don't show you how much better it handles, what a huge difference that autofocus improvement makes to it. Things like the faster 10 frames per second and everything.
Yeah.
It's everything we loved about the D850, where we said it is the best of their tech.
Do everything all together, yeah.
And this really feels the exact same way.
This is basically the perfect A7R camera now.
Yes.
You know, it's not leaving you really wanting anything. And if anything, especially as camera viewers in the business that we deal with, where we're trying to give you advice on what's the best bang for your buck and what kind of camera is going to suit your purposes, these kind of cameras like the D850, the A7R Mark III, to some degree the 5D Mark IV, but not quite as successfully.
It's getting a little bit longer in the. It feels longer in the tooth every day.
You know, it's now about saying, hey, look, these cameras don't really have compromises. You get a lot of features. It suits a lot of different kinds of photographers, and I mean that's great overall, right? Other than having to buy 2 or 3 cameras to cover all your needs, now you can get one, or you can get 2 as have your backup as a pro and not have to worry about changes in between.
Yeah, it used to be we'd see someone with the higher end pro body and a camera like the R as their backup. Just grab 2 Rs and you're set.
Yeah, well, you used to have to do things like, oh, I've got to, well, I mean, you still need an A7S Mark III. We want that to come out. Where the hell's that?
Yeah, but I think Sony does kind of hold back the specs of their photo flagships less than the other manufacturers. You know, the R2 is certainly a camera that we used as a primary video camera. We used it when we were in Photokina. We've used it for a few Sony videos. It's been a workhorse video camera for us. That's the area this has improved the least, but it's still very, very capable. Certainly, I'd take it over a Nikon D850 for video capture.
There you go, absolutely, right? I mean, Sony knows that they've got the video. So they're keeping the stuff that worked well. They're adding the stuff that was lacking and missing. I mean, for me, the biggest thing I noticed, actually, that I really appreciated, the My Menu support, because the menu is still convoluted and huge. So set up the stuff that you want. I love the new dials. Way, way better than the A7R Mark II's dials, which honestly were like toys.
Very spongy.
Tiny and weird and silly. The A7R III, it's beautiful. It's like really, really nice. Nice for EVF, nice for LCD. Always nice to have the joystick control, which Sony hate calling it a joystick. But
I don't know why.
I don't know. Grew up in the 80s, played a lot of video games. It's a joystick, but it works great. Choosing your autofocus that way, better autofocus coverage, and then you improve the focus and the buffer rate. I mean, these are all the weaknesses taken care of.
Yeah. Let's jump over there. I'm sure we got some questions coming in. Right, Ronnie?
No, you don't have some questions. You have all the questions.
Oh, we better start
perfect.
into all the questions.
You guys just rattled on and on. But it is your show, so let's get to...
You're damn right, Ron.
Yeah, I know.
I love Ron's how willing he is to criticize us while the show is going on instead of after we wrapped, which would be a more appropriate time.
No, I criticize you all the time.
After the show, Ron's just all handshakes and high fives and back slaps and hugs and
YouTube is
kisses.
Stop it.
Okay.
Okay. So
He kisses us all the time.
We've been chastened.
Oh, jeez. Okay, so
Head rubs.
For Chris? Damn it! I'm trying to
Quick,
be
Ron, quick.
professional here.
That was a
Quick,
minute.
you're rambling.
Okay.
Come on.
With the A7R Mark III, would you use it to shoot wildlife?
Yes.
Yes, for
Yes,
sure.
all right.
Focus coverage is fantastic. It's quick, and a lot of people are digging the high megapixel cameras with the ability to crop tighter.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
And it kind of just flies into the fact that Sony did also announce at this convention a 400mm 2.8 G Master. So, wildlife photographers, we're not quite there yet. That is still something that Sony needs to work on.
Yeah.
APS-C telephotos, for the love of God. But it's changing, and it's perfectly good for that.
All right.
Yeah, I would certainly take the only real advantage of the 9 at this point for wildlife having the silent shutter without the rolling shutter is going to be huge for birds and things like that.
Yeah.
That might be the only time I would really lean that direction. For everything else, I think the R is a better body. I always want more resolution for wildlife shooting for that cropping flexibility.
There you go. Jordan just coined a new techie
What,
abbreviation.
Shylent?
Shylent.
The Shylent.
Yeah,
Yes,
this
for the shy
si-
photographers
si-
who don't want to be seen taking
Sony's
pictures of
patented
people.
Shylent technology.
Oh man.
There you go. Let's see. We've
Just throw
got
that coin in the fountain and never worry about it again.
It's a character from Merchant of Venice.
that would answer. Would you
Shylock.
would you recommend it for bird photography?
Shylent?
Okay, serious question. How's the focus in low light? Some say A9 level. Some say better than A7R Mark II.
Definitely, I would definitely compare it to A9 level. Again, remember this pre-pro, we didn't get to really test it side by side, but
Yeah.
I would say very close to the A9.
Yeah, it certainly felt like the A9 to me. I was especially impressed in low light at how it could grab the eye. That I detect
much
is my
so,
favorite feature on the Sony cameras right now in their autofocus.
And if you look at my Instagram channel, you can see some low light shots taken on that camera.
Yep. Check out Chris's Instagram.
Slightly techie question. Is the Sony star eating issue resolved with the A7R III?
No one wants to talk about it at Sony,
Yeah.
which has me a little bit unnerved. But it's still a ways till the camera is released, and they have said that they're working on software to address this. So hopefully that'll make its debut in the R3. That would make perfect sense. It's going to be an amazing camera for doing astro and landscape.
Hopefully, yeah.
But we will see. That's certainly something that we're hoping to test once we get the production version in our hands. Lots of long exposures.
Pardon
of
that bumpy
skies.
bump on the camera. We tend to have earthquakes here in Calgary. That's a
If
lot.
Gary tries to move things.
Keep going.
And shots fired. What do you think is the biggest disappointing thing on the A7R Mark III?
I really was let down by some of the software video limitations. I've complained about Sony's Gamma Display Assist a lot. You always wind up looking at an overexposed image if you expose your log properly. They still haven't tweaked that. That would make a lot of sense for them to do. And I was really hoping we'd see improvements for rolling shutter for both photo and video, and it doesn't seem to be the case with this new sensor.
Yeah, rolling shutter's still pretty rough on that. For me, I would say it's a couple things. Again, there's not much to complain about, but the new software that these companies are pushing, and not just Sony, but Fuji, all these companies are saying tethering software. You can do raw processing. They're trying to get you away from Lightroom and stuff like that. I used some of the Sony software. We processed some RAWs ourselves that I took. And what? Just a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we processed some RAWs as well, just playing on the computer. It's not a great system, the software. I mean, it's the problem with the companies making these software programs. They're just not that intuitive to use. The other thing I would say...
I'm going to cut you off really quickly
What are you going
there.
to cut me off on there?
That was the old software. The new
okay.
software will be released around the same
Yes.
time as the R3. They actually had some demos of it up with live tethering support.
Oh, and that looks
and it
good,
looked pretty sweet.
but we didn't
yeah.
get to play with it. So I hope that they improve that. I hope that that gets better. The only other thing I would say, and this is something that we're not allowed to test because it would cost us $4,000, but if there's somebody out here who just has 3 A7R Mark IIIs, if you wouldn't mind getting the things wet and seeing just how weatherproof they really are.
In a
that would be
controlled
great.
environment, that would be fantastic.
Because again, you know, the 7R IIIs are weather sealed. That is a rating they give, but these are all subjective ratings, and I do still feel like I know Pentax would be more rugged. I assume Nikon and Canon would be more rugged, and that Sony would be the least rugged of these kind of top 4.
But we're just basing that on what we intuit by holding them, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's got to be some millionaire out there who's like, I will finally do the camera ruggedized testing no one's willing to do. But no one's stepping
or
up.
Sony wants to give us an A7R III that we could torture test. That would be awesome.
Okay. And
But I think weather sealing is going to be a weakness compared to the other brands. But otherwise, not much to really think
It's
of.
a very well-rounded body.
Okay. Fuji Rumors is asking where's Sony Alpha Rumors.
Excellent question.
See. Travel Buddy is asking, hey guys, advantages of A7R Mark III versus D850 and vice versa.
I mean, EVF is the biggest one for me.
Sure.
I am at this point, I prefer working with an EVF.
Yeah, autofocus during video, having the eye autofocus control. Obviously, size and weight will always still be an issue there.
In-body IS is, the more I use it, the more I really do depend on that. It just seems, instinctively, I'm shooting with slower shutter speeds than I used to. So I really do rely on that, and for video, it's great.
For video, it's great. Although, again, you know, on the A7R III, the rolling shutter still does make it an issue. But, I mean, image stabilization helps a little bit, for sure.
Yeah, the D850, its strength is still going to be, as always, battery life. If you love using that optical viewfinder, it's really becoming more a subjective
It's
thing.
the nicest
whichever
optical
you prefer.
viewfinder we've seen, yeah.
And, of course, the lens lineup, which Sony's, I mean, honestly, I mostly complain about the Sony lens lineup if you're an APS-C shooter. They're really fleshing it out in full frame right now. Yeah.
You know, keep that in mind, though, that Sony can make more lenses, and they are, right? So that is happening. But yeah, the D850, I love that camera. I think the 7R Mark III, though, can really do a lot of what that camera could do. And Sony did. During the press launch, they very thinly veiled the concept that they are going after, well, the
That
D850.
is exactly the camera that
exactly.
they're targeting.
Like, you know, they not so they not so quietly stated that there are SLRs out there and that they are going to show that they're dominant over those. So yeah, we want to test them out.
Yep.
More questions, Ron.
Yes. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Do you think the back LCD is good enough now for manual focus and video?
Absolutely. I mean, I noticed right off the bat, and Jordan has, of course, things you want to say about this too, but just punch-in focusing through the EVF and the LCD, I noticed an improvement. It was actually
sharper,
quite a bit easier. It seemed sharper. So, manual focusing wasn't that much of a chore. It seemed very comfortable.
Yeah, back screen is still, it seems quite sharp, but I still always go to the EVF to confirm focus because it's so much better. I mean, immediately you've got a much better idea. And the screen is still quite reflective. Even when we were shooting out in low light, you can see us up on the rooftop in that field test. I was really struggling when I was doing a walk and talk to actually see the display properly. It's, you know, I complained about the same thing with the GH5, but I feel the Sony's still a little more reflective.
That being said, though, I mean, it's the A9 EVF and LCD. We did notice those were improved. It's still not going to rotate those side to side, so no selfies, no, no classic video handout kind of stuff, but it does still work okay.
Let's see. What else do we got?
Is our
here?
B-cam pointed at the ceiling?
Yeah, I believe they're changing the battery on that right now.
Okay, great.
Thanks for demystifying this, Jordan. Is there any noticeable difference between in the dynamic range between this one and sharpness between this and the Mark II?
That's the hard thing for us to test. I mean, we want to wait till we get a pre-production. We want to use the new software.
Yeah.
We want to get Lightroom support. So when that happens, absolutely we're going to test it.
I wouldn't expect a resolution bump. If they had done something like remove the AA filter, we certainly could have, but the R2 didn't have an AA filter.
Yeah.
And like we said, RAW tends not to shift too much from camera to camera if they're using the same sensor.
Yeah. More array was kind of creeping up in certain things, but again, I think it's going to be rectified by the time the camera comes out. The thing is, Sony is promising an extra stop of dynamic range, right? 15 stops, that is the official claim, and they're saying it's due to the original sensor in the A7R Mark II not being fully utilized. So they're saying it always had the capability to 15 stops, they just didn't really have the technology to put it in that camera at the time to wring all of that out. Yep. And they're saying that now with the A7R III, new architecture, new pipelines, they feel that they can now get 15 stops of dynamic range. Regardless, though, you're getting tons of dynamic range of the sensor. Yep. I mean, the A7R Mark II sensor, I said Mark, was widely regarded as one of the ultimate sensors of all time as far as combination resolution, low light, and dynamic range.
Yeah, I think dynamic range is great, but if you utilize all that information in a single exposure where you're exposed in the middle, it looks like bad HDR is kind of the point that we're getting at here. I find it most useful for recovering misexposed shots.
Yeah.
But, if you've got a balanced exposure and you use everything in it, it looks pretty garish, honestly.
It's Jordan, but you got to remember that Jordan's very old-fashioned. He doesn't like the new ways. He's very stuck in his ways. I think it's a nice thing to have more dynamic range. I think some people are going to benefit and utilize it, but for most of us, we're probably not going to notice a difference.
Do you really think that it has 15 stops of dynamic range?
We haven't opened. It's probably we're
yes.
really saving all of those technical tests until there's no point in us doing them now with a pre-production camera when there's still lots of room to change. So we haven't put that much time into testing these.
Let's say this. I think that when we test the new camera, I think we're going to notice an improvement. I don't think it's going to be dramatic. I think we're going to notice an improvement. Sony wouldn't make that claim nowadays unless they could somehow substantiate
so they've got to back it up somehow.
Because they know that all these companies are going to chew these cameras apart, test them, and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't worry about it. I think you're going to get an improvement. Don't worry. Yeah, it's there.
And let's see. Is the electronic shutter speed limited to 1/8,000th of a second? Also, did you notice a difference in ISO performance between mechanical and electronic shutter, unlike the A9?
We didn't really notice it. I mean, we weren't shooting light where you could really push those files to really test that difference, but
And I think this would again come down to controlled tests with the raw files.
Yeah, we really got to do it.
Which is exactly why when we do these, we make sure this is a first impressions video. We are answering our initial impressions with this. We will do the full review, and we'll get quite a bit more detailed in terms of image quality. But at the same token, I mean, people like Imaging Resource and DP Review, Hi Rishi, they're going to beat the hell out of these files as well.
Now,
we don't really have a lab.
Here's the real thing that keeps us...
We have a library.
Yeah, and here's the real thing that keeps us from testing these and really being able to make a claim at this point. Sony very carefully stated 15 stops dynamic range, right? We don't know if the electronic shutter is going to change that. It probably will. But they stated 15 stops dynamic range at lower ISO. Okay, they have revamped in this camera the ISO structure and the shadow detail that you're getting in these areas. So they've geared it more, maybe more like what the opposite of what the Nikon D5 did. You know, they're kind of tweaking things, they're pushing it so you'll get better dynamic range and low ISOs. Yeah. We don't know what those low ISOs are. Where's that cutoff point? You know, when these questions were asked, Sony couldn't really answer them at the time. So it's hard to say. We have to get them and test them.
It's funny, what we really found was the D850 is the king of dynamic range at base ISO. But once you started ramping that up a little bit, the R2 actually took over a little bit. Maybe they're pushing that dynamic range back, biasing it more towards the bottom.
I mean, honestly, peeps, it could, it could very easily be that shooting the A7R III at lower ISO will be better than the A7R II at lower ISO, but shooting the A7R II at higher ISO might be better than the A7R III at higher ISO.
We don't know. These are all fun things to ponder about for a month until we get production cameras.
Exactly. But the manufacturers really are doing this thing now where they're really kind of specializing and scaling the camera into some areas for high ISO or others for low ISO. It's a weird game out there now. They're not just doing an even curve anymore.
Okay, I've got beeping.
Don't take things.
Sorry,
everyone.
It's okay. Don't worry.
That's all right.
Yep.
We've got...
He gets flustered easily.
We've got two-parter. Focus speed compared to A9 and A7R Mark II single point, not eye focus, and rolling shutter in E-shutter mode.
Pretty bad. Rolling shutters was still there. It's
rolling
very
shutter
present.
does not seem to be improved from the R2, so the electronic shutter is nothing that you're going to want to use if you're moving the camera or your subject's moving.
Do you have that photo handy? Let's throw up that photo.
No, don't click over yet, Ron.
Don't click over yet.
Don't do
Jordan's
it.
Gonna find. So I did take a test.
Right,
we had a beautiful girl doing ballet, and I just kind of moved the camera actually very slowly. And we are still getting quite a bit of rolling shutter. You can see it there. Pretty awkward.
Yeah, in the video that we've put up, you can see how fast Chris is moving the camera. It's not that quick.
Barely anything, okay?
Same speed I would use for panning with a moving subject, and it's
full
very
frame,
extreme.
electronic shutter, you know, just a little bit of movement. She's distorted. Of course, you can see the poles. Look at the building in the background, right? So, yeah, rolling shutter is still going to be an issue. This is going to only really be suitable for still life or subjects that happen to be oriented in a very kind of horizontal way, I guess would be good.
It's a shame because Sony is pushing so much their silent. It's the same thing we said, Nikon, why are you pushing the silent shutter so much? The rolling shutter makes it unusable for most types of photography. Yeah. Same issue here, unfortunately.
And the A9 really does something special when it comes to rolling shutter.
Yeah,
I mean, it really controls it so well.
It's that stacked sensor,
Beautiful.
and it makes it usable in almost any situation.
But the fact is, it's expensive technology. They can't put it in the A7R III, or they won't, because that would certainly make the A9 kind of pointless.
They were saying it's just high-res sensors, take longer to scan. There's less advantages to the stacked CMOS sensors at this time.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Now, what was the original part of that question? Because that was the electronic shutter. Oh, focusing speed.
Yeah, focusing speed.
IAF, I did notice a dramatic improvement over the 7 II,
yes.
a 7R II. It's very similar to an A9.
I found it almost identical to an A9 with less coverage.
That's the one less coverage, but more coverage than an R2. So... Yeah, very, very good improvement. The focusing speed was excellent. Eye autofocus worked like a dream.
Yeah, I mean, IAF is one of those things where I really like the widest possible coverage.
Possible, yeah.
Because you don't have to worry about your focus point at all. So it's great to know anywhere within the frame where, you know, generally if you're manually selecting the focus point, you're not going to want to move it all the way to the edge of the frame.
No.
So more coverage is great, but this is still, again, much better than what we're seeing on a DSLR right now.
Oh, yeah.
Unless it's like a D500. You know, that's the only thing that would break that rule.
But the A9 does give you an advantage there too. So A9 is still a great tool for what it's designed for.
Yeah, it just became a much more specialized tool.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people I know were grabbing them for the battery life, EVF, things like that. A7R makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And okay, so we have people yelling out Fuji over Sony, which is fine.
Okay, well, Fuji Rumors is here, so that's bound to happen.
And
thanks, Patrick.
There you go.
Fuji's definitely still a more beautiful camera.
High Ground Productions called Fuji a crip. Oh, correction, crop, but maybe they are assuming...
Oh, I thought they were bringing in some gangster
gang
talk.
affiliation.
Woo,
yeah,
rough.
no, that was calling out Fuji for their gang affiliations. Long-time viewer Rawi.
Hi, Rawi.
This.
Mr. Dantas.
Your strap is on that GH5 right there.
No, it's not.
No,
Jordan has no idea. That's Dalbor.
Oh, that's
Nice.
Dalbor.
Dalbor,
Nice.
the...
Yeah. Waiter internet there, Jordan. This is why I chastise you. Let's see. Sup, guys? I'll be getting an A7R Mark III from an A7R Mark II, but this is more of a general question. What's the optimal time to get rid of your camera when the new release comes up? Any tips from a retailer side? Now.
I think a lot of people would normally suggest that you start selling it before it happens,
Before
but
it
actually,
hits the market, but then you don't know if there is a production issue or something. It's always a bit of a roll of the dice.
yeah, I would say, get your new camera, give it a month or so, but the markets are going to be saturated with cameras, and we certainly see that. When a new camera comes out, a lot of people drop off the old gear. It tends to be about a month after that camera comes out. A lot of people are attached to their gear. They're like, oh, will I sell it? Maybe I should keep it. Maybe I should give it away. Maybe, I don't know. And they hum and haw. So I would say sooner the better. Try to beat it past that month.
Having talked to quite a few professional photographers who have A7R IIs, they all seem to be upgrading.
Yeah.
Just based on the battery life, usability, things like that. So I do think we're going to see a big deluge of those in the used market.
But I don't think getting the camera out before the new camera comes out is a good idea, because other people are going to wait to see the camera before they make their decision. Very few people are going to be like, oh, I don't want the A7R Mark III. I know I don't. I'm going to get these A7R IIs on sale. Right. No, they're going to be like, I want to see the new camera. I want to feel it. Maybe it is worth the extra money. So don't jump too quick on the gun, okay? People aren't going to start looking for cameras until the new camera hits the shelves.
Let's see.
Or, Rawi, send it to us so we can torture test it. We will beat the crap out of it.
Sorry, Rawi.
What about 10-bit?
We really want to get one wet.
There's no 10-bit.
No,
Okay.
external.
I know they're saving it for they have to put that stuff in the S3.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen in the shop, the S2 has kind of fallen off a cliff sales-wise, and it's because of the GH5.
Yeah. You are going to get S-Log 3, you're going to get HLG. I mean, these are some of the improvements happening there, but again, they're not huge improvements from the standpoint of somebody who's going to do their own post and really push things and log.
I don't recommend using S-Log 3 with 8-bit cameras, and HLG is great if you just want to shoot, throw it up on a HDR TV. But how many people aren't going to edit their footage and care about HDR displays right now?
Right.
That's a pretty niche.
Pretty niche, right?
Okay.
So S-Log 2 is great. You've got that in there still, but S-Log 3 is not a huge change.
Still a more capable video camera than the A9.
While we're video nerding,
Yeah.
John, thank you for asking the question a second time. I know I missed you on the first go. Can you menu dive while the camera is writing to the card?
You can now.
Hey, that's a thing.
Yep. I hope we see that in firmware on the 9 as well.
All right. Will we see this new Sony on the sidelines of NFL and or CFL games? The CFL, I just
No,
put
the
in there.
CFL cannot. Those photojournalists can't afford new cameras. They will continue shooting with their 1D Mark IIIs.
You know what though? I think the Summer Olympics 2018. That's going to be an interesting move for Sony. We ran into Nick Didlick, who's a friend of the store. Actually, we've known Nick for a long time, and our boss Peter has worked with him in the Olympics before and stuff like that. Ardent Nikon user for a long time, very skilled photographer, but he has, of course, now moved over to Sony. He was there. We got to say hi. And with the release of this new 400 2.8 G Master, which will be out for the Olympics next year, or at least in the hands of the photographers next year, Sony is definitely, obviously, going to make a push for high-end sports. That is going to be the arena where they release it, and I can expect to see a lot of 7R IIIs and 9s at that event in a big, bad way.
Yeah, and I do think it's smart that they've given themselves lots of time. Like, why was this pre-announcement, a year and change before this lens actually ships? But it makes a lot of sense to give these pros time to start adapting now. So we'll see. I'm very curious. I think we will see some on the sideline for sure.
Oh, yeah, and I don't think Sony can screw up a 400 2.8. I imagine it's going to be very expensive.
I hope that
and I imagine it's going to be very good.
I really hope they make an orange 400-2.8 just to make it easier for me to tell, oh, there's a Sony shooter there.
That would actually be an incredibly
It's going to
smart
be
thing.
white. It's going to look like a Canon. It's going to be impossible to tell. So, yeah Sony, neon.
And the wildlife photographers can't complain because animals, for the most part, don't even really react to bright orange. So
there you go. Bright orange.
Bright orange. That'd be a great idea. They're not. Well, maybe they'll do it. We'll see.
Yeah.
Do you think that we'll be seeing Sony dominating in the professional space anytime soon?
I think they're making a lot of inroads right now,
Yeah,
especially
soon is
with
a relative
hybrid
term.
shooters. Yeah, it's always going to take a while. I mean, when your livelihood depends on something, you stick with what you know for the most part.
Let's say this. Sony has built their company on innovation. Sony has, from the very beginning, stated exactly what their manifesto really is, and that is to take over the photographic world. So you can expect that they're going to give it a good try. I'm sure they will.
And you look at a lot of the limitations of those cameras, they're just ironing the kinks out one by one.
Every complaint that people would have about mirrorless cameras when it comes to sports journalism and wildlife, they're working to rectify. So more than other companies in the mirrorless world, I'll say that. Although Fuji's doing a good job too.
Yeah.
I don't want a blood crypt fight over here because Jordan's wearing red.
Yep.
Please don't shoot him.
Oh, speaking of what we're wearing. That's
Is that a good segue?
That's an awesome segue. So people have commented, I'm always wearing, these are like my two staple shirts.
I'm actually wearing it today, the better.
Because I've found Dissolve, they're this company in Calgary, have always had the most comfortable shirts. They
Jordan
dropped one
loves
off for
their
me.
shirts.
They're amazing shirts. I've been wearing them for years. Never actually really looked at the company, what they do. But recently I was doing an ad campaign. We needed some stock for it. They're a stock video company. I checked it out, and it's actually awesome stuff, and they're really good guys to deal with. So
Jordan
I'm wearing
now
this
has-
shirt with even more pride now.
Jordan now has 4 Dissolve shirts that he can wear. So if you get 3 more for him, he will never have to wear any other clothes ever again.
Yeah.
But Dissolve is a really talented video stock agency in Calgary.
It's just good stock. They're based in
Good
Calgary.
stock videos. Yeah.
You don't have to wade through a lot of garbage for it. But yeah, it's funny because I've been promoting them for years, it seems, and I can happily say that they're not a horrible company. They actually are really great. So
as I say, we're using their stuff in our ad campaign. We're very happy to deal with them. And thank you for the shirts, Dissolve. We appreciate it. Look at that. Better.
There you go. I'm not sure. I'm going to switch back to this camera angle so the rest of the internet can see. Guys, I just want to point this out. Between Chris and Jordan, there's this pillar, and there's this weird anomalous, like, kind of shadow that moves from the bottom to the top of the screen. This could be a camera thing.
It's a ghost.
Or it could be spooky Halloween camera
It's a
store
ghost. Get Steve Huff. Quick.
So, yeah. But that's for you guys.
He'll let us know.
Guys, we still got a lot of questions.
Let's do it. Okay, we'll do speed round.
We'll do a speed round.
One lightning round. The first lightning round. Did the buffer improve over the R2?
Huge.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
27 in compressed, or sorry, non-compressed RAW, and like 87 compressed RAW.
Lightning round. I am a Canon shooter with good glass, wanting to pick up these for travels and Metabones with AF. How good is it?
We haven't had a chance to test it yet. We didn't have a Metabones in E-mount yet. I'd expect they're saying very similar to an A9, which was good. Good, not great.
Okay. Battery life?
Phenomenal.
Yeah, 2.2 times better. A lot of people are complaining like, oh, now we've got to buy new batteries. But it's like, are you crazy? This is double
is
the
what
battery
we've
life.
all
This is
been
what you
waiting
want.
for. Yeah.
No more W's. Get rid of W's. W's should all be thrown into a... Never mind.
Yeah, for hybrid shooters too, it's a better battery design for video.
Yeah.
Certainly there's an improvement in stills, but it's huge in video.
Lightning round. On a scale of 1 to 10.
Sometimes lightning strikes twice, Ron.
Come on. On a scale from 1 to 10 for in-body stabilization, with the GH5 being the 9, where would the A7R Mark III be?
6.5.
Cool.
I was going to say 7, 10 for Olympus.
Yikes.
7's good.
7's very good.
Ron's a 6.5.
Hell of a lot
and we
better
still
than
tolerate
Nikon
him.
and Canon, that's for sure.
We still let Ron come out to our games, and he's 6.5. He plays reindeer games with us.
Oh, fair. You don't invite me out anywhere. On a, let's see, hi from Germany. Do you expect Sony to add flip screen someday?
No.
No, I really think that's going to be one of the things on the S3. I think that'd be ideal for them to differentiate it from the other bodies.
They'd have to change the body design.
Yep.
Yeah, they'd have to change the body design. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know if that's going to happen, and this is a good question. Oh, quick, because I was surprised that the 7R III uses the same battery grip as the A9, even though they actually have slightly different body designs. So if they dramatically change the body design on the S3 to allow a screen, maybe
They might
the grip
make it
won't
incompatible,
fit.
yeah.
Or maybe let's make you buy another $800 grip.
Well,
don't know.
I think they're going to make you grab that 4Z battery holder monstrosity, which is really designed for video, honestly.
Yeah, fair enough.
Does this make the A99 Mark II redundant?
A little bit.
Are they both high-res, fast-shooting bodies, but Sony is investing in E-mount?
Yes.
That was,
Yeah,
In
more
terms
a
of
rhetorical
actually
statement.
operating the camera, I far preferred the A7R III. Just there's that little lag on the A99 too, which is gone in this. The autofocus system seems much more refined on the R as well. I think it's a better body unless you're invested in A-mount glass,
Yeah.
but you already knew that.
Sony say they're going to keep A-mount going, man. So
don't
that's
get it.
another hour-long discussion.
Yeah.
Does it overheat from video recording?
We don't know. We didn't get it long enough.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Hello
not that we tested.
Hello from Hong Kong. Someday
Hey.
the screen will be in full brightness while recording. True?
Oh, no, it is full brightness while recording. Quite bright, but as I mentioned before, just
Reflective.
quite reflective.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would still throw one of those little small HD focuses on top. That's a great little monitor for the price.
But the EVF is brilliant.
Let's see. Why
Come on, Ron, lightning.
Why no non-lossy compressed RAW?
Yeah, why not lossy compressed RAW?
It's really funny. You'll see an episode coming up shortly with an old camera, which also shot huge, bloated, uncompressed RAW files. And here we are 12 years later, and we're dealing with the same thing.
Yeah.
I think they need to do it, but we haven't seen it yet. It's bizarre to me. It's the way every camera should use, and what it would do to your buffer would be phenomenal.
Yeah, but you know what they basically done on this camera is they just put a bigger buffer in it, which is great. But yeah, still big files.
Refinements to the RAW files, I
Still
think, need
big
to be made.
files.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. My dad says good morning.
Hi.
Hi,
Hey,
Dad.
Mr.
Good
Is it
morning.
Mr. Bubnick?
Yep.
Hey, Mr. Bubnick.
And there we go.
Ron's
Your
last.
son's sassy this morning. Tell him to stop.
Focus peaking? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Works great.
Yeah.
And they also have the zebras back that were missing in the A9.
Yeah.
Those are
Nice
back
live
in as well.
histogram. Yeah.
I still want waveforms.
No waveform. But I mean, you'd have to get an external monitor to really make this camera shine, anyways. So you'll get your waveforms there.
Yeah. Or get one of those small HD focuses.
And that's where I cut out the
Okay, cool.
video. And yeah, you can keep on talking.
Yay!
while I kinda-
Okay. How are we doing
Alright.
for time?
We've got John here to do a
Yep.
book talk, but before he jumps in, there's a couple quick things. We like to do our local stuff if you are in the area.
Yep. Let's get that through.
All right. So first of all, if you're in Canada, right now Canon is doing their classic Best in Glass. They're really happy with that name. They've been using it for
They've been
several
using
years.
Best in Glass for a long time now.
Yeah, I think it's as old as the EF mount, that particular name, but it is going on right now. If you're looking for Canon Glass
Yep.
to throw on a Metabones for your Sony A7R III.
Number one selling digital SLR camera brand for 8 years, asterisk, in a row. Yeah, I'm not a Sony WHORE. It's just, they really are taking over. I mean, they've taken over Nikon Spot.
You know, there's words we can't say, but it doesn't matter if you spell them.
No, it's like if you're talking
All
to
right.
5-year-olds.
Oh,
I have
okay.
no idea. But yeah, like, are they going to become the number one leader? It feels like it.
It does really. I mean, I think we'll see when we see the mirrorless strategies from the other big two, how, you know, if they're going to fall off the top of the pile or what's
Feels
going
like
on.
it.
But it does feel like it a lot right now. As well, while we're talking about
yeah, Best in Glass
the
sales-
market leaders.
Best in Glass sales on now, and those sales are going to carry through to Black Friday and beyond. So, yeah, come check them out. Good pricing now. Big savings.
This camera's beautiful.
Yes, I love the Leica Q.
I think we reviewed like 3 years ago. It's an older camera, but they brought out a new version of it.
Yeah.
It is gorgeous, and there's still nothing that directly competes with it if you like the 28mm.
But this will sell 2 cameras. Just the fact they've changed the color. And I bet you that Ron Bubnick right now is like, I need that camera. Not need it, like he's not going to buy it, but I need to borrow that camera from the store every day.
And this is perfect because it does have that nice silvery chrome finish. It'll be a lot easier for you to mark up when you do.
What a gorgeous camera. Pre-order now, it's coming.
Yep.
And get get Leica M10s, man. M10s are available and they're so nice.
It's so great. That is actually.
No, what about all our workshops and everything?
I don't have splash banners for those. Lots of workshops coming up. Check out.
Oh, your wife will be so mad at you.
She will.
But yeah, just check out the website.
I know she sent me an email.
She did. She sent you an email. Thecamerastore.com. There's workshops coming up. The ones we want to talk about. We did talk about Ryan HK.
We're going to talk about workshops at the end of this.
Oh, fine.
Because I will do some research in a minute here.
Hey guys. Yeah. We went full-blown podcast for a little bit, and we shut off the lights, but then there was like some questions after everyone was like, the lights are out, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Did the lights go out?
Well, sort of.
There was no video feed,
There was no video feed.
We're professional.
Dalbor is wondering, on the A7R Mark III, is the EVS proximity sensor active when the screen is tilted?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Or no, I'm sorry. No, it does disable it when you tilt the screen, just like the A9.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah. I did trigger it a couple times with my chest, like just holding the camera, sort of chest level with the screen flat. But
we recently tested Sony's original version of this technology, and it's improved quite a bit in 12 years.
Yeah. Also, Dalbor is awesome with a bow and arrow. His archery skills are getting badass. You should check it out. No, serious. This is Robin Hood.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get back to questions in a moment.
I read about Errol Flynn on the airplane. He was a bad man while we're talking about Robin Hood.
Stop rambling.
Yeah.
Let's get John on here.
Okay.
All right.
Dalbor's a very nice man.
Yeah. Thanks, Dalbor. And good morning.
John's coming in.
Yay.
All right, so just 2 seconds. We're going to get John mic'd up here. Jordan's going to help him out. There you go. So John's going to come on the show here, and we're going to talk about something that's actually very interesting. It's something that's also a lot of people might not be familiar with it. We're kind of coming into an era now where the way that we look at photos, the way that we archive photos, and the way that we appreciate photos has changed a little bit.
You're heavy breathing.
Yeah, am I breathing?
So
yeah.
John's coming
I've got
in
a new lavalier microphone. I've entered the 21st century.
There was some hard.
Yeah, you're hard.
Right there.
You're hard.
I don't know how to. Here, I'll put it in my pocket.
Let me take care of
There
your stuff here.
Thank you.
Yeek.
Whoa.
And
We're having all kinds of.
wow.
Hi, Gary. I think we're still okay.
Well,
We're good.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're good.
Doing okay. Let's not pull too much.
I won't
All
pull
right.
too hard on my tether.
Wow.
So, John, of course,
Yeah.
you always come here and you talk about books.
I am gonna talk
And
about books.
you are talking about books in the photo world and lots of different photographers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's Gary, by the way. Everybody got to see Gary. Bye, Gary. But Magnum, now, we want to talk about Magnum today.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a classic agency, probably the quintessential classic agency.
Yeah, that's right.
And I imagine there's a lot of people who may not have even heard of Magnum.
I don't know.
depending on their age.
I mean, it's a funny thing. I thought for the longest time that there were universals in photography, that there were things that everybody knew. And as it turns out, we live in an age that is not really that aware of universals at all. So
It's changed. You're right. It's absolutely
everything
changed.
has changed. So this year is the 70th anniversary of Magnum Agency. And it is a big deal. The change that Magnum initiated was that the photographer owned the rights to the picture that they took, as opposed to not having the rights to the picture and only selling the rights to whatever magazine or newspaper it was, whatever venue it was that that was there to basically consume the product. Now, as time has moved on, we have so many more photographs. The question that I've heard from some local photojournalists is whether or not there's any relevance to Magnum Agency anymore at all. So I'm trying to start a bit of an argument with our audience. Is do you think that Magnum is relevant any longer? I happen to think that it is. I think that it's important that there is a threshold or a bar, but I also think that there's kind of archive fever. People get really interested in the idea of like an archive and history, and they make it so that validates everything that they do. And there's maybe something that's dangerous about that as well.
It's interesting, when I'm teaching my students in class, sometimes I'll reference older photographers and classic photographers. I mean, Magnum, we think of Magnum, we're thinking of like Henri Cartier-Bresson, we're thinking about Ernst Haas, we're thinking about Inge Morath, Robert Capa. I mean, these are big names, classic names that a lot of people have heard, but sometimes I'll mention these names and I know that some of the people are like,
they have no idea. So 20 years ago, there was a documentary that was made called Magnum, The Changing of a Myth. And if you go onto YouTube, you can watch that documentary. And it's a really good introduction into where did Magnum come from? Why does it exist? And 20 years ago, they were trying to make, this guy Rainer Holzer was trying to make a documentary. He made another documentary about William Eggleston that's very good. But he's trying to make an attempt to show people the new people at Magnum. Well, the new people at Magnum 20 years ago, I mean, there's a whole
They were
bunch
still
of,
old photographers.
well,
yeah.
I mean, and there's newer people even still, and that's the thing is that Magnum keeps growing and keeps changing and it keeps adding names. Like, Donovan Wiley was probably the youngest photographer on that documentary, and they've added people like Zoe Strauss, Trent Park. I mean, there's a lot of newer names in the Magnum roster. I actually wanted to show you guys a couple of books. One of the things that I wanted to show you was this book, which is called Magnum Atlas. It's a 365 book, which is kind of like a daily calendar.
See, that's right there. They're trying to make things more relevant, more modern.
Yeah, and they've been doing it. They've been doing them in a sequence. Like this isn't the first one that they've done, and I think their idea here is to make it a little bit more accessible. And I wanted to read something here from Chris Steele Perkins. This is an introduction. It's
Go for it.
the Magnum archive can be viewed from diverse perspectives and can be sampled by curators with different degrees of astuteness and imagination. At the time of writing this, I'm aware of a number of projects drawn from it. An exhibition on youth culture, a book on Magnum's co-founder George Rogers' lost color photographs from the Sudan, an exhibition of screen idols, a presentation of Henri Cartier's first photographs, and naturally this collection, Magnum Atlas, which follows Magnum photographers on their extensive wanderings around the globe. He goes on to talk about millions of photographs are made daily. Everybody is a photographer now. So it's like they know that they have this archive of really interesting photographs, but they also know that there's millions of people who are uploading pictures on Instagram all the time.
Right.
And so there's this thing that's taking place in our moment right now. Brian Wallace was just writing on the Aperture blog a really interesting article about like just reevaluating photography, and I like that Magnum does do that. They constantly reevaluate what.
So
they're
here's the
doing.
question then. I guess here's the question, and this is a question that we can ask to people at home too. The banal way of just saying is Magnum dead now? I mean, are they
Or is it relevant?
they done? Is it
Yeah.
irrelevant? Are they modernizing the way they have to? Is it worth appreciating the old photographers?
Yeah.
I mean, how many young photographers now, or I shouldn't even say young, just new photographers, are getting in and being exposed to the Bressons and the Hasses?
Yeah.
And how many people are actually being exposed to that
I
kind of
wanted to
stuff?
talk about also some of the Instagram photographers that I've been watching.
Sure, because
lately,
that's the other way of doing it, right?
So,
That's a new way of doing it.
Stephen Harper, who's
Not our Prime
not our
Minister.
prime minister, who lives here in Calgary.
He's in a band. He is not a photographer.
He's got
Watch, he's probably be like, look at my photographs. I'm the best.
He's got a great book called A Good Stress. You might see right now on your screen, I'm paging through a couple of the books about Magnum that we have here in the store.
I like this. This is cool.
But at the end of it, there's also a couple pages from Stephen's book. So Stephen Harper is an interesting photographer here in Calgary. David Brandon Geeting, Chris Maggio, Amanda Janowski. There's all these really interesting photographers on Instagram, and I got to admit, when I'm looking at photography, Chris, when I'm getting excited by photography, I'm not getting excited looking at pictures of Henri Cartier-Bresson.
Because you're always looking at my photographs and getting
I
excited.
love your photographs. I love pictures of puddles, but what I'm saying though is that it's like pictures of people who are making things right now. That's the stuff that's super relevant to me. And Magnum, I think, does have a bit of a problem. I still think it's important.
Okay, but why is it?
I
'Cause
also think that there's a problem is that they don't really deal with emerging photography very well. They deal with kind of established photography, but they could.
I mean, I love the old photography, and I think I'm old, for sure.
I'm
we're
older,
old. We're old.
very
Yeah,
old.
We're old. But
We make Quantum Leap references.
But let's be honest. I mean, a large proportion of the photography in this book is way before our time as photographers.
A lot of it is.
And we grew up idolizing this stuff in
Yeah.
a way, and learning from National Geographic and Time Life and these
Yeah.
classic photographs. And so I still have a nostalgia for that, and I return to that often.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to teach, and I'm saying like, we've got all this modern technology. We take better photos than we ever did before, as far as from a technical level, but aren't these photos from the 30s and 40s and 50s shot on inferior gear still compelling
but that's the thing.
and
You guys
moving?
just talked about this new camera, and I have to wonder whether or not people are trying to make old photographs with new cameras, and that the new camera deserves a new type of photograph. I mean, you push the form forward to make things that are not that don't look like I mean, using a black and white filter on an A7R Mark III, I don't know, guys. I mean, it's
yeah,
up
but is
to
it
you if
still
that's
about
what
the
you wanna
subject
do.
matter, though? I mean, I would almost argue that photography
is about the
today is becoming more about the subject matter because we're just pointing our cameras at things, getting the subject matter. Maybe the art is disappearing a little bit compared to what we used to have.
There's an Instagram called the Subjective Objective that I think is really interesting. You know, I think that's what's happening now is that people natively understand some of the things that we're talking about. I mean, you can deconstruct this stuff, and I can talk about archive fever and
No,
a lot
please
of
don't.
really. But honestly, I think what happens is that people intuitively see what is changing in their culture, and that gets reflected in their photographs.
Right.
And what would make Magnum and what makes Magnum the best photo agency is that it does reflect those things, and it also does protect the rights of the photographer. And that is something that I think changed.
It's important.
Yeah, it really did change photography, because prior to that, and even in the world, like one of the journalists who's talking to us about like why is Magnum not important, they're trying to say that other agencies where you might get into more venues are more important because you have more access. Well, I mean, yeah, but you have to deal with an editor. You have to deal with a photo editor who's asking you, "What did you get today?" Which is kind of gross.
I think Magnum's absolutely still relevant, and I think the photographs that we are looking at here on the screen right now and such are just as important, and people can still appreciate them today. Is Magnum doing what they need to do to get this classic photography into the eyes of new photographers, or is that where they're having a problem?
I don't know. So, I mean, if there's anybody out there who's curious about the question about Magnum, I'm sitting here to have an argument about is Magnum interesting. And if you guys have questions about is Magnum
Do we have any
interesting,
comments or questions, Ron?
I'll fight with you.
Or you might even agree. We'll see.
Yeah.
What constitutes as emerging photography?
So an emergent photographer would be someone who hasn't had, no pun intended here, exposure to a broad audience. Now, right now on your screen, you'll see A Good Stress, which is Stephen Harper's book. I'm not attempting to just give Stephen Harper exposure for the sake of it.
But he's a good example of it.
But he's a good example of it. Who's somebody who is very early on in his career, and whose work is representative, I think, of a moment. I can find similarity between his photographs and a whole group of people who are working in a similar fashion, and I can trace the genealogy of his images to probably Roe Etheridge is a photographer who this is linked to, maybe Vivian Sasson, and I can say that those photographers' work links to William Eggleston. So there's definitely an arch of photographs that have aesthetic parallels. And now here's a new person who's coming out and whose work is a little bit like that, but is also a little bit different and represents a new emergent principle in photography. And emergence is something that comes up in a lot of theory right now, that there's, you know, a chaotic body of knowledge, and all of a sudden something comes out and it emerges as having form. People talk about that in biology, I guess, but that is sort of what's happening here, is that you're seeing something emerge that's a new form. And you want to see something like this, like Magnum, give space to a new form.
Right.
And I guess that's what I mean by emergent.
I mean, it is certainly different that when you look at things like Instagram, a big part of it is based on popularity. It's based on how you market it. It's based on how you share it. I think photography's always been that way, for sure, but it is a different medium than an agency coming up with photographers that they feel are going to be important in the future, and that they want to show and that they want to give an opportunity
It's
to.
interesting, too, because Magnum has a process where you have a portfolio, the portfolio is reviewed, you become a nominated photographer, then you work for a while as a nominee, and then you get inducted into the agency, and then you're in that agency for as long as you want to be. You could be a lifelong member, or you could leave.
But that takes time, that takes dedication.
It takes time and dedication, and I understand that that's the method that they've established.
And it'd be hard for photographers starting out to be like, is this the way I want to go, or should I just try to get onto Instagram, do social media, make my own books, market myself that way?
One of the funny things about Magnum too is that it's always foisted its own idea of itself, and I mean, I don't want to get into too much of the controversy, although the famous photograph of Robert Capa's falling soldier, there is still a controversy about that picture and its truth value. And there's truth value also in Magnum. I mean, one of the books that I wanted to talk about today is Magnum's first exhibition. It's from an Italian publisher called Edition Salvatore that does talk about the fact that they said that this is the 70th year anniversary of Magnum. They say that it was started in 1947.
Yeah.
Well, the Magnum had been exhibiting throughout Europe for a period of time before this mythic meeting of all these people in
But they're selling themselves.
well, they try to sell themselves. Yeah,
Okay, Ron, anything else there?
myths are important.
Wow, Jimmy's dropping bombs in all caps. You can see the classic photographers on the internet. No need for an expensive book.
Oh yeah, no, you don't need to buy a book. Okay, so here's my elevator talk about books.
Quickly though.
Yeah,
Quickly,
really
though.
quick. So the thing about a book is that it is temporal as well as it is objectively an object. So what happens is that I know where and when I am in place when I'm dealing with a book. On the internet, I don't have that ability. I can know that I am 3/4 or halfway or through a book, and then I can show somebody that book with a reference to place. Every book is a durational object. It is time-based, and it's real. I know that I'm talking to the internet about reality, and I know that I'm...
John,
That's
there
wonderful.
are bookmarks online.
yeah, that's right. I could just bookmark the heck out of my Magnum.
And then you can send me said bookmark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could
Yeah.
send, and then you'd be dependent on whatever device that it is that you're using, and some engineer.
Of course, when everything goes dark,
when everything
I'll
goes
have
dark,
those books.
That's right. Yeah. Well,
The thing about the internet is you can only cut yourself emotionally on the internet, but book, you can also do it physically.
Wow.
the Irish saved civilization, and I'm not Irish, but I'm trying my best.
Okay. What are we doing?
Keep going.
We're good?
Yeah, keep going. Any questions? Any
All
other
right,
comments?
any other questions and
I
comments?
want to fight with Jimmy more. Jimmy, come on.
Oh, come on.
Throw hot fire. Let's go.
The internet is a great way to see photography. It's obviously the preeminent way, but I guess what we're talking about is, curating these things together, how photographers get their photography out there just in general. I mean, obviously Magnum has an internet presence,
Yeah,
but
and I mean the internet is fine for a lot of things. I was going to ask Jordan if he watched Epically Later, the new episode with Harmony Korine. Did you see Harmony Korine on Epic? So amazing. The internet is amazing, and there's lots of things about it that I love. I love Instagram. I love these new photographers.
I mean,
on
Instagram becomes almost like this chaotic, organic thing where
Yeah.
you stumble onto stuff. It's like finding music on YouTube. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
this brought me to this link, which brought me to this song, and now I love it.
It's
blah, blah,
awesome.
blah.
Yeah.
But it's an organic, changing thing, and you really have to stumble on it. You have to get popularity. You have to follow the
to a
trends.
degree, some codification, some formal.
This is different, though.
It's
This is
some
different,
of it,
though.
Some of it's helpful. Some of it's helpful to have that frame put around things. A disciplinary frame makes it so, just like photography, you've got chaos. All of a sudden, the frame comes along and it provides order, and
There you go.
that's important. The ordering mentality of a genius photographer is an important thing.
All right, Ronnie.
That's
All
anything
right,
else?
yeah, we're good.
Okay,
We're
good. As most of these people.
People are just topics are dancing everywhere now.
That's good.
Okay.
We want to see topics.
Well, that's what we wanna
want
do,
you to
eh?
talk about photography,
Okay.
not just cameras.
Jason Chavez would like to know if anyone here likes to dance.
Yeah.
See, that's where
yeah.
the topics are going.
Oh, do we like to dance?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
Okay.
let's go dance.
On that note,
Okay.
thank you, John.
Okay.
All
You're
right,
welcome.
Thank you,
we'll pop
John.
you out there.
How do
Yeah.
I unplug myself?
I will
from the-
unplug you.
Oh boy, here we
And
go.
we'll get Jordan on here.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody. Bye.
All right.
So now we got Jordan back.
We are at the end of our show. But
Are we?
want to do one last A7R III speed round before we go.
Oh, really?
man.
Oh, what
Oh.
about the workshops?
So I didn't actually have a workshop list. However, there is the Rosalie Hebert Scholarship.
Mm-hmm. We should definitely talk about that. Rosalie Hebert.
Jordan, you should probably
turn your mic on.
Yep, that's a thing.
Okay, so don't worry about Jordan. I will explain. So Jordan came on here. We're talking about workshops and stuff, but we don't have much time. However, Rosalie Hebert, a very interesting photographer. Unfortunately, a young woman who passed away about 11 years ago. And the Alberta College of Art and Design has a fund and a sort of trust going for her memory.
Yep.
And we just want to let you know, I mean, if you're in Calgary here, a couple things. First off, you can donate to the fund here. Anybody over $20 will get a tax receipt as well.
Huzzah!
if there's anybody who wants to donate work to be sold silent auction-wise to build funds, that
We
would
see a
also
lot
be
of
much
amazing
appreciated.
photography come through here.
Yeah.
So,
We've got a whole bunch here sitting already. So please, if you're interested in helping out the Rosalie Hebert Fund, look up that and contact us, and we would love to get some of your work in here for silent auctions.
Well, and after John's talk there, I think it's a great way to support emerging photographers if you think that's important.
Yeah, because I mean, this fund is basically going to photographers who are starting their careers, trying to get established, and also show a strong community service presence. So, I mean, this is a unique thing.
Okay. Well,
Rhonda.
that was great.
Rhonda.
The internet would like to know if we can do a podcast where, Jordan, you do all the audio editing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, that was more me putting you on the spot.
Okay, so
you're
that
welcome.
was just kind of a backhanded thing.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, we're certainly looking at turning this into a podcast
There
format
you
show.
go.
For the
You are
time
welcome,
being,
guys.
it's just really time sensitive.
In your A7 II review, you said it makes sense to release the A7 II before the R2. However, this year is different. Why wouldn't you release the A7 Mark III and then a A7R III later?
2 words, D850.
All right, cool.
Those aren't words.
I don't know if we should.
No.
That's a letter
are
and
we
some numbers.
speed
Yeah.
rounding, or is
4
that,
characters.
Is this the
Yep.
end? Ian? We're at 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So
okay.
this is where
Mickey
the
Rooney taught me that's the appropriate amount of time.
I
He
think
means Andy Rooney. He's
this
having a
is
hard time
where-
with names today. Mickey Rooney taught us that Breakfast at Tiffany's was
Oh,
an
right.
incredibly racist movie.
It was a very racist movie.
What Andy Rooney taught us is that at the end of 60 minutes, you can have yourself a good laugh
Yeah.
and some introspection.
How about some of life's little foibles?
and then have a whiskey and go to bed.
Yeah. Okay,
Is-
one last
is-
A7R III question, and we are going to sign off, guys.
one last A7R III.
Let's make sure it's an awesome one.
There's so many awesome ones.
We don't have a
Ask
beef
us a
with
few
Jared
then.
Poland.
We do not have a beef with Jared Poland.
Yeah.
You
Stop implying that.
You don't. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
A7R. Okay.
A7R
Mark
is
III, 120 frame per second focus tracking.
No, it does not get the focus tracking with because
That is
it's-
something the A9 has, and they had to have it to 60 frames per second on the A7R III.
because it's not using the information when it's actually capturing the image, unlike the A9 where it's constantly feeding the AF sensor.
Now you do still get minimal blackout time. I mean, shooting, you're getting your live view basically of reality, so you're not behind the action, but you're not getting 120 frames per second.
but only at 8 frames per
Yeah,
second. You go
at
to
8
full
frames per
10,
second.
you're into
Yeah.
slideshow mode.
Yeah, slideshow mode, no live view.
Let's see.
Yeah, if there's anything else we're talking about, let's talk about it.
Yeah. Is Jordan drunk?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Any rumors about the A9R?
No.
Nope.
I don't think that's. I mean, I think we're gonna have to see A7S, A7R, and A7 IIIs before any more A9 business.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, they could have made this the A7R or A9R.
They could have. I'm
As
surprised
well.
they kind of didn't.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
A7R Mark III worth the money.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
same price as the A7R Mark II, and I thought that camera was worth the money at the time, and sales showed to be so.
Historically, Sony always jacks the price every time they bring
Yeah.
out a new version of it. This time they replaced it at the same price as
Yeah.
the old one.
Yeah, so definitely, and it's a way better camera than the version 2.
Armster, 40D to an RX 100 Mark V as an upgrade.
40D?
Worth doing.
Yes, do it.
Okay, cool.
Do it. Nobody needs telephoto. Do it.
A7R Mark III versus iPhone 6. Please help.
Yeah,
such
the
a
iPhone
troll,
6
Jason.
works better for texting, playing games, and talking over cell channels.
Podcast support is abysmal on the R3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see drones having an influence on photography?
Yes.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Let's see. Definite lag with the video today, along with banding. What cam is that?
Banding? We're using our GH5s.
GH5s.
We explained it. That was an apparition. That is a
no.
Yeah,
I
that
actually
ghost.
cracked the code. It's the wrong shutter speed. I have one camera set to degree shutter. One camera is shooting at a shutter speed, and that's why we're seeing this weirdness with the lights. That will be fixed next week. I didn't set the shutter speed.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I did. So take that.
We love you.
I'll take it. That's fine.
We all love
Whatever,
you.
Internet.
Thank you very much for watching the show today.
Yeah. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Eat lots
Absolutely.
of stuff.
We will see
We'll
you
be
guys
back
all
in a couple weeks. Couple weeks. All right. Thanks so much for joining us.
Schedule is now on camerastore.com. I love you all. Bye.
Bye.